Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Farewell. Thank you for being here. I'll make a few quick announcements for the upcoming weeks. Next week on March 8th, we have Danette Trich, who is the local chapter president of PFLAG. So you'll want to be here next week for sure to catch her presentation. Is called a PFLAG Refresher and the Importance of Allyship. And the week after that, on March 15th, we have Wes Pritchard, who is with Freedom from Religion Foundation. And so given the climate right now, I think it's probably apropos to hear from someone like Wes and to talk about freedom from religion. So today I am very, very fortunate to have such a wealth of wonderful people in FCC who can step in at the last minute, like Rose Whaleswan. She graciously accepted the challenge about like a week warning. We had a cancellation, and so I threw it to Rose, and she said, "Let's do it." And so I'm very appreciative to have her today to speak on the life and philosophy of Joanna Macy. Rose is an artist, a writer, a teacher, a speaker, a trauma and eco-informed spiritual director. She's hosted retreats. She has an MA in eco-psychology. She is ecotherapy certified. She's eco and trauma informed and educated. She has an MDiv in interspiritual chaplaincy, and she is a PhD student. That is a big mouthful of credentials. So we're really in great hands today with Rose Whaleswan. Let's welcome her.
So, given the fact that it's last minute, my slides are really boring and stupid, but they'll help us to keep the track. I do want to start with, actually, Lisa, if you wouldn't mind, or anybody, actually all of us, let's do a little prayer of gratitude to get going. Dear one, I am grateful for space away from the troubles right now, at least a few minutes of remembering who you are in our lives, how you keep us going, how you keep the planet going, how we are made in your image and likeness, and in the image of Earth and creation itself. Does anybody want to add some gratitude right now? Gratitude for our breath and this sunshine today. And through our breath that we are connected with beings.
Breathing in our own sense of stableness and breathing out our own peace into this fractured world.
Breathing in the love we all have here.
One of the primary lessons and actual models of work from Joanna Macy is that we always begin in absolutely. So that was part of it, but it is also, the next step is honoring our pain. So that gratitude is in the face of what is happening. We are now at war and everything else that we can think of. I wore this today in honor of the over 100 young girls the very first bombs in Iran hit an all-girls elementary school. and they have at least 100 missing, or that they know of, and others missing. So my son gave me this little chart. Okay, gonna get going. Again, the slides are kind of boring and whatever. So. I'm going to connect this all up in the end to our arts festival that is happening in June, and also my future plans, which is I didn't really mean to make quite so public yet, but Rob pushed me on this, which is okay. So Joanna Macy, she born in 1929, according to her own words, in a slightly troubled family, very Republican. But in her own words, that taught her a great deal of independence and resilience, and that is what she shared throughout her life. She was an activist from very, very early on. Her bachelor's work was in biblical history and religious history. She was very connected to her Christian history at that time, but went through a crisis of sorts. Later, in her 70s and 80s, she came back to some of her Christian heritage, but she moved towards nothing and then Buddhism. She studied political science and political analysis, as well and systems theory, as well as her religious studies. She then married Fran. They were married for 56 years. He was an activist and organizer, and then director for Peace Corps. So she traveled with him to Nigeria, Tunisia, and India. And during those years, she started with Fran and a team of people doing grief groups. They were doing organizing for activism around all kinds of issues, but in her own experience, and you can read this in some of her later works, they started to become grief groups because she realized that people needed that. They didn't want to go do a bunch of activism, or they burned out doing activism because they hadn't done their own work. So that was some of the gems, the first seeds for her work. After that, she and her husband also, she was actually hired, apparently a lot of people were hired that were doing political analysis at the time by the CIA. She worked for them for 2 years. She called them the worst, most wasted years of her life. But what she did was analysis of the systems in the Soviet, because her husband was a Russian scholar and specialist, and so they did, for the CIA, they gave them all kinds of information about how things were working. But what she started there with Fran and a team of people was groups on which they called grief and empowerment. She actually went to some of the towns around Chernobyl after the Chernobyl disaster in 96. And she, 86. And she, so these people, picture this is a group of people. She went to this town I can't pronounce, starts with an N, Novovoishkli or something like that. And it's a town in between Chernobyl and Moscow. So when the Chernobyl disaster happened, Moscow realized that all the clouds from the nuclear fallout were directly headed to Moscow. They made a very, very fast decision to seed those clouds and have them precipitate, have them rain out and never reach Moscow because they were nuclear waste. But that meant that all of the villages and peoples who lived in the forests between, it rained on them for days and days and days. And it was point blank nuclear waste raining on them, and the government never told them that that's what was happening. So they just kept doing all the things that they were doing, and the children were playing out in it and everything else. And so when they went in after, they were doing grief and empowerment works with these people who at first absolutely did not want, they would do their history up to 1986 and then they didn't want to talk about it because it was so bad. They knew themselves as forest people, and they were unable at that point to even go into the forest. So their loss was so complete. Her work helped them pass that. So I want to just share a little bit. This is a book, pass it on. Some people here at the church, the Creation Justice folks, studied this book for a while. It's very good. Her work helped them to get past that, what she calls unblocked, by doing the actual grief work. They fought her and they fought her and they fought her and they said, we don't want to do this. Why are you making us do this? And they did it. And she said, I don't have an answer for you. I don't have wisdom to share with you, when she realized how hard it was for them. I have no wisdom with which to meet your grief, but I can share this with you. And this is from her work in Germany, post-war. After the war that almost destroyed their country, the German people determined that they would do anything to spare their children the suffering that they had known. They worked hard to provide them a safe and rich life, and in fact created an economic miracle. They gave their children everything except for one thing. They did not give them their broken hearts. And their children have never forgiven them. Those words broke open the grief of those people. They were willing. Yeah. And the next day, they came back and said things like, I hardly slept. It feels like my heart is breaking open. Maybe it will keep breaking again and again. I don't know. But somehow, I can't explain it. It feels right. It connects me to everything and everyone as if we were all branches of the same tree. And another person said, yes, it was hard yesterday, hard to look at the pain, hard to feel it, hard to speak it, but the way it feels today, it is like being clean for the first time in a long time. And his use of the word clean there meant uncontaminated, because their entire lives were contaminated with nuclear waste. So those are the deep seeds of her continued work, which became Active Hope and the work that reconnects, which I will talk about some more. Just in general history also, she did become an international spokesperson for Nuclear Guardians because of that work, which wasn't anything official. She was never paid, but she got sent all over the world. People wanted her to speak. She ended up with her family in San Francisco and was adjunct professor at Yvette Flunder's home, the Star King for Ministry, as well as the University for Creation Spirituality, as well as California Institute for Integral Studies, which is where I'm doing my PhD, and also Naropa University in Boulder. So I have a lot of connections with her over time. Actually, my first introduction to her was in '89, and I did this retreat, which is called Council of All Beings, which I hope I will offer this summer, and I'll talk to you about that in a few minutes later on. She continued, she wrote at least 17 books. When she was in Germany, she learned a German, and then she translated Rilke's poetry, 3 volumes of Rilke's poetry. She continued, if you look her up, there's a billion different schools of Joanna Macy and the School of the Great Turning, podcasts all over the place. Worth listening to, worth reading, worth knowing about for sure. And she did this up until she died when she was 95 last year. And literally until in the last year was when she would only speak rather than be videoed, but she was still teaching. Profound woman, witty, very opinionated, very strong-willed, and made a lot of things happen. So I want to, a lot of what I want to continue doing is what's called the work that reconnects. So, next slide. How do I go there? Oh, look at that. When she was in Germany, in Russia, the language she gave to convince the Russian people, the people around Chernobyl, that this was important. This is how she described despair and impairment: psychological tools for coping with the effects of massive collective trauma. That's kind of what we need today, right? And that was the beginning again of her defining grief as a doorway, a path, an absolutely necessary portal to being able to continue on. And if any of us, if you've ever gone through a process of grief, losing a loved one, losing a home, losing something, there is a process of grief. And it's important to do it, and if we don't do it, we don't move on in the same way. So she applied this specifically to ecological, environmental activism, and that's what I'm all about as well. In 1988, she met, after all of her systems work and everything else, she met John Seed and Arnie Ness, and they put this book together and created the Council of All Being, which is a retreat, like a 4-hour retreat, although it could be a whole day, where you take on an animal that might be going extinct or is suffering in some way, or a plant, and you then speak back to the group from that perspective. It's a very powerful experience that I will be doing. Arnie Ness was a Norwegian philosopher who coined the word deep ecology and continued to do deep ecology work forever. He called on Silent Spring and helped to develop the whole entire field of eco-psychology, which is also my master's. John Seed is still doing workshops in Australia. He is a deep ecologist, and he calls his groups deep ecology. He brought more to Joanna about really truly accepting non-duality, that human and the other than human world aren't so separate, that we all go through the same things, and what affects us as humans affects the world, the planet, and what affects the planet affects us. He wrote, and he bases all of his work on this, a particular profound experience one day. He's a rainforest activist, where he realized, I was no longer John Seed protecting the rainforest. I was the rainforest, protecting herself through this little piece of humanity, which is, I was going to say something else about him. Maybe it'll come up later. Am I speaking too fast? I feel a little nervous. Okay. All right. And John Seed also brought to her the concept of the ecological self, which is eco-psychology in itself is it is a form of psychology, but it doesn't want to be set next to other forms of psychology. It wants to actually also challenge other forms of psychology, which are very anthropomorphic, all about myself and me as a human versus everything else. And the eco-psychology wants to say the self cannot be defined apart from our relationship to the rest of the planet. So that's the ecological self. All right, she went on to develop. Everything was kind of in, everything she did later in life fit with everything early, so it's a little bit hard to put it in a clear timeline because it doesn't work. But so the spiral, that came out of this book, Active Hope. Very well worth having. Originally in 2012, and then they did a second version in 2022. And it develops the idea of active hope, which is based in grief. When you are grieving with somebody or going through a hospice situation, the pain that you are feeling, the difficulty of it, the suffering of it, is all about the fact that there is love, there is belonging, there is a sense of deep connection, and you commit to a fidelity, and that is your intention going forward, even if you don't know what's actually going to happen. That concept of activism or being present to some loss, or someone else's loss, or the planet's loss, is about your intention. Your intention is to remember belonging, remember how much you love, and be faithful to that person or persons, Mother Earth, planet. It is she has an actual spiral, and for the workshops that are part of Work That Reconnects, you always use the spiral. And I don't know if anybody was here or would remember, but I think it was 2 years ago or 3, the annual lay service on a Sunday. We went through the spiral. We started with gratitude, and then wonderful man right here. We did this beautiful song. The second piece of the service was a very somber, sad, whose garden is this? And then for the sermon, I explained it. So we did the 4 stages in a Sunday service, which I thought was pretty awesome. So it's always starts with gratitude. There is always then a place. The next step is honoring the pain. And it is specifically for the world. She did activism in every area. She helped settle Africans. She helped settle Tibetans who were refugees. She did women's issues. She did just about everything. But she focused very much on earth issues because they're all connected. So when she says for the world, whatever it is, that most moves you is where you should go, but use these all the time. She then said the next step was seeing with new eyes, and so there are specific workshop activities that she developed for seeing with new eyes. And as she grew later on in life, she added old, also ancient eyes. I should bring in the indigenous. At first it was just, let's just do it differently. But then she realized, and everybody told her, yeah, but they've always done this. These other peoples have always done this. So she said, okay, it's seeing with new and ancient eyes, and then going forward. And there's always a ritual at the beginning and end of these workshops and retreats for how to go forward with all of this in a new way. And then usually there's also some gratitude at the end of it. Okay. Another connection here with eco-psychology. One of the research elements that has come out of eco-psychology is about activism in general and activism for the planet. So it started in the 50s and 60s. It was around with gay, lesbian, feminist, anti-Vietnam, etc., all kinds of activism, right? And they realized after about 20 years that a lot of the people who were activists just stopped being activists. And so what eco-psychology, one of the things, primary tenets, is that true sustainable activism that works, that is effective, where the people do not get blown out or burned out, is not based in facts first. It is not based in all the doom. It is not based in scientific information. It is not based in political, whatever. It isn't even based in passing laws that work. It is based in personal experience of connection, love, fidelity to that, and an intention that says, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to keep doing it. So, part of the genius of the work. So, Work That Reconnects. This book here, if you're interested in facilitating ever or learning a lot about the different workshops, I'm also hoping to teach people to facilitate, has 1 million practices that match up with the 4 stages of the spiral. And I want to read these with you. These are the assumptions of the Work That Reconnects. So I'm just going to read it. This world in which we are born and take our being is alive. When Joanna and Macy spoke about alive, it was pre-Gaia theory in a lot of ways, but she understood it in terms of system theory, that the Earth, the planet, and the universe is self-sustaining in some way, like any singular plant or person, and so it was alive in that regard. I think that a lot of people who do work with Reconnects also take in Gaia theory, the idea that the planet is itself a living being. Our true nature is far more ancient and encompassing than the separate self defined by habit and society. Our current, especially Western world, is extremely all about separation and dualities. The planet is different than I am, that person is different than I am, that country is different than I am, and she is very profound, that our true nature is actually about what is the same and deep within all of us. Our experience of pain for the world springs from our connectivity with all beings, from which, should be which there, also arise our powers to act on their behalf. She was very strong. I've already said that the grief is about connection, but she was very, very strong, and opinionated when people said, I don't want to do all this grief work. And she said, you're not going to get all the way there unless you do. That's where the ability comes from. The capacity to do more comes from there. Unblocking, which is means denial, anger, rage, despair, disempowerment, all the things that keep us from doing stuff. Unblocking occurs when our pain for the world is not only acknowledged but experienced. So that was why she said, therefore, do these workshops, so that you can do it. Do it with other people. When we reconnect with life by choosing to bear our pain for it, the mind retrieves its natural clarity. That is her very, very Buddhist language. So when she was first in India with the Peace Corps, and then later in Germany, and then later in the United States, she became very, very connected with Theravada Tibetans, who she helped to resettle when they were escaping the Chinese occupation. But she stayed connected with those people throughout her life after that. Got to know the Dalai Lama, was one of the few Western people ever allowed back into Tibet, and so forth. But in her later life, in 70s on, she said, I love Buddha and I love Jesus. She just danced. She danced constantly. She was always moving. The experience of reconnection with the earth community arouses the urge to act on its behalf. It's sort of repeating the same thing, but making it as practical as possible. The actual lived experience of reconnecting is what makes you actually want to do something. So when you do think of grief and losing a loved one, or loving a loved one, not even grief, just a relationship, you want to do something for them because you love them. And that's where activism can also live. So, this is also very central to the work that reconnects and very important for today's world, I think. She does, in part of her philosophy, it's in that book as well as others, is this idea that there's just 3 times, and times is not the right word, narratives. 3 narratives that are always going on at the same time, and we get to choose which one we want to do. Business as usual would be, let's go back to the oil fields, because that works. We have a lot of push right now in our particular administration for business as usual. Let's go back to that. That's what worked for however many years it supposedly worked. Some people experience success there. Let's just keep doing what we've always done. That's business as usual. And there are people in the world who that's just an easier way to be. And then there's other people that are pushing for it for different reasons. And then she refers to the great unraveling, which I actually want to read about. I did not. Oh, there we go. The great unraveling is the story we tend to hear from environmental scientists, people like Jim Bendell today, and others doing collapse and adaptation modes for climate change. Independent journalists and activists. It draws attention to the disasters that business as usual has caused, and it continues to create. It is an account backed by evidence of the ongoing derangement and collapse of biological, ecological, economic, and social systems. Now this was put together in 2018. Here we are, 2026, it's the same thing, right? So that is also happening, and it's an important part of what is happening at the same time as business as usual. There's people that are going, okay, business as usual, yeah, but that isn't working. I mean, it's actually not working, and people are trying to come up with other ways of doing things. The great unraveling is a piece of what happens. All of this is also built on, for Joanna herself, her own kind of mystical understanding of how life works. So a plant goes through, I get to be born, I get to be here for the summer, and then I'm going to undo, and then I'm going to redo. So it's sort of a compost model. The great turning, which is happening at the same time, is where we get to choose if we want to be part of that. The great turning is the story we hear from those who see the great unraveling and don't want it to have the last word. It involves the emergence of new and creative human responses that enable the transition from industrial growth society to a life-sustaining society. The central plot is about joining together to act for the sake of life on Earth. And there are 3 dimensions of the great turning, which we get to choose to be part of. And in her 90s, she added the 4th. The first dimension, that's not it. It shouldn't be business as usual, sorry. It should be holding actions. The first possibility is holding action in the great turning, is holding actions. Holding actions in defensive life are those things that we do, like protests, like writing and calling your senators, like recycling, things that will help to stop the damage that's being done now. Those kind of activities, which we all can and should be part of. That's one part of the great turning. Second part of the great turning, second dimension of the great turning, transforming the structures. We take a look at what doesn't seem to be working in the great unraveling, and we create new models. We do things differently. She has ideas like understanding the dynamics of corporate capitalism and doing things about it. This book is really, really good because she gives really detailed examples of how to do things differently. Land trusts, community gardens, getting as local as possible rather than relying on other systems, bigger systems that aren't working. Permaculture, restoration projects, all kinds of things. And then the next one is shifting perceptions and values, which is on a more personal level, and it may be then the areas of churches, spiritualities, retreats, personal connection experiences, cultivating connections so that on a personal level, our actual values and worldview shifts. All of these are happening at the same time, but we get to choose which area is kind of the one I like the best. You know, I want to get out there on the streets, or do I want to offer a retreat to help the shifting? I want to do both, but which one am I putting most of my time into? And Joanna was awesome about asking people to trust themselves. Whatever it is in whichever area moves you and creates the most suffering and pain, that's the one. Pick that one and do it. And then in her 40s, or in her 90s, Lydia Hartunian, she lived with her for a while, and I remember this coming out, she added a fourth dimension, nurturing life. And what she meant by that was the smallest, tiniest, littlest bitty things that we do, even just a thank you when you pass by a tree, are absolutely essential. And to actually cultivate little, tiny, little things like that to nurture what you're doing in whichever part of the great turning that you've chosen to be part of. And there are many stories now of people who spent the last year with her, and she would, as long as she was able to walk, she would walk outside, and she'd go past a bush, and she just, you know, somebody's walking with her, but she'd spend 10 minutes just talking to the bush about how beautiful it was, or just dancing because the sun was so beautiful. Loved the feeling on her skin. So that's what that came out of. Nurture your own life, nurture your own joy and pleasure, and deep connection isn't just about the suffering, it is really about the love. It is really about the joy as well. And she was awesome. Watch some videos with her, you will see that joy come through. Part of that fourth one. If the world is a quote from her, if the world is to be healed through human efforts, I am convinced it will be by the ordinary people. People whose love of this life is even greater than their fear. When she said that, ordinary people, some folks questioned her. Are you saying we can't change the other people who don't think they're ordinary? Big government and this and that. She said, oh, no. Still do all the work. You still got to do the holding activities and other things to change them. They have the capacity in them to also change, but only if you do it. Only if you bring it to them. But support yourself in this way. So this was one of her quotes that I love about choosing the Great Turning, and she saw herself as mostly choosing to be part of the Great Turning. It's more profound than it sounds. The most remarkable feature of this historical moment is not that we are on our way to destroying our world. We've actually been on that path for a while, a long time, right? It is that we are beginning to wake up, as from a millennia-long sleep, to a whole new relationship to our world, ourselves, and each other. Joanna Macy, this is part of where she came back into some of her Christian background, in terms of seeing an actual calling. If we are the people who are born and are living right now while our planet is in this much trouble, then we are also the people who have been created to be here during this time, and we have what we need to do it. That's pretty profound. You know, I mean, we don't think of it that way. We don't think, oh, I'm here for a reason during this troubled time, because I'm the one that can do. God is telling me I'm the one who has what is needed right now. Pretty amazing. Inspiring. I have no idea where we are on time. So,
10 more minutes, let's say.
okay. So, when you see this term, a celebration of life, what do you think of?
Funeral.
Okay, but we don't call it a funeral, we call it a celebration of life. Why? Because We are honoring the pain and honoring the love and joy and wonderfulness of that person, right? This is the title for this year's Creation Justice Arts Festival. And we've chosen that on purpose so that the art and the music, whatever, and poetry, whatever comes that we actually have that weekend, can do both. It can say, I'm really sad about being in the sixth phase of mass extinction. You can do a painting of the sorrow, the oil taking over, and it can be the absolute beauty and pleasure and joy that we have in creation. So that's on purpose. It is it's the first week in June. After all of the other things, forum and everything else will be done, so the Founders Room will be able to be filled up with artwork and crafters and people interested in these things, and we will have some music and poetry being shipped out into the system all day long.
June 5th, 6th, and 7th.
5th, 6th, and 7th. Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to do anything Friday night or if it'll just be 6th and 7th. The team is still working on that, and if you want to be involved, please contact me, because there's plenty to do.
Is that going to be here?
Yes, yes. So last year we had a weekend of it. There was a show in the atrium, and then artists and crafters in the Founders Room and other places, I think. And then we had an event that was wonderful with music and poetry, but not enough people were there. So we're trying to figure out how to incorporate the music and poetry so that anybody that's doing the art can also, like, Dave came up with this wonderful idea. Dave Seifert, right here. That we may put it out from the chapel. We'll ring a bell, and everybody that's out there will know, stop. We're going to listen for a minute to that artist who's doing either poetry or story or whatever it is. Anyway, there's different ways. We're going to just incorporate them all together instead of having a separate event. But I'm looking forward to it, and I hope everybody can make it. I don't have any more slides. So the other piece of this is, I call it plotting. So my PhD is in ecology, spirituality, and religion. And when I signed up for the PhD, I had to say, what is the research you want to do? And the research I want to do is specifically around people's original and deepest sense of belonging to the planet. Guide people through various kinds of meditation and activities to reconnect with, like, maybe what was the very first thing. As well as, like, maybe, for me, I was 4 years old, walking on the beach in Oregon, on the Oregon coast, and whales came by, and I heard them. I heard them before I saw them, and then I actually didn't know what they were until I was a little older. But I did think that, I used the word whale, but I don't think I understood it yet. But when I told my siblings, they didn't believe me. So when it happened more than one time, I just kept it to myself for a while. And I really, but then whales became huge in my life. I've had an entire lifetime of dreams where I swim and do things with whales, and then actual physical experiences as well. So it became very, very powerful for me, but it was first something that my siblings just said, that's stupid, you're making it up, right? And I have a feeling that a lot of us have these experiences. Like, there was a butterfly when I was 5, or whatever it was, and we forget them, and our society doesn't give us ways to freely share that kind of connection. It doesn't give us ways to spend time finding the meaning in that, or create something beautiful because of it, unless you're an artist, or share it with other people. So I'm also developing a pedagogy, a way to do those 4 steps. And I thought that, well, in 3 years or 4, when I'm farther into this, I'll do a little nonprofit. But it may be happening faster than I thought, just because of things that have happened, and I'm It's in a limbo, but I'm super excited about it. It brings me to tears at times. But I am hoping very quickly to start a nonprofit. I have one possible title for it, KEEP, which is Kinning Earth for Everyone's Peace Project. And kinning is from, we think of it as being from indigenous, but it's not actually from indigenous originally. It's Old English for family or land that you are connected with. So kinning Earth, in my mind, the more all of us, each of us can do this individually and all of us can do it as a community, it is better for the entire world if even one person connects more to their original belonging story. So that's what it's about, and it will, right now I'm looking at a space nearby that has a community garden and a multi-use room and land, and I hope to be living there in a little tiny house. So keep that in prayer. It's a thing in process, and I had to start my own little LLC to get that going. But that's where this is all going. And it very much connects up with my own experiences with Joanna and Macy over the years, since '89, and the work that reconnects. And the work that reconnects will be definitely part of what we do, as well as bringing other nonprofits in who are interested in the same kinds of things for education, ecological education, interspiritual mystics in the garden, all kinds of different ideas. So, yes.
So Joanna Macy has written how many books?
17.
17. And for people that are lousy readers like myself, do you have one that you recommend that's kind of a easier read, a quicker read, big ideas kind of thing? Because I don't read long books well.
The one that the Creation Justice folks did, this is a couple of essays that cover a broad part of
and I
her
can't
life.
quite read the title.
It's called Pass It On.
Pass it on. Okay.
Yeah, it's 5 stories that can change the world, and it's from different phases of her life. Yeah, and this will give you the big, kind of the big philosophy part of it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Honey Rose, that's the one you have to find used now, right? Pass it on. I think so. I don't think it's currently in print, Ardith, but
Oh, darn.
you can find it used.
Okay.
And if not, you can get
I
it.
think I got mine new though.
Oh, you did?
I did. Because
Okay.
I've had it, you know.
Maybe I'm wrong and it's a different one, but let me check quick.
Huh.
I'll get back to you.
Paradise Press.
It's-
Well, it makes sense. It is possible, but it should be done. Active Hope, the newest edition of Active Hope, and then this one. This one gives you all the practical stuff, but it also gives you philosophy behind each of the practices, if you like that one. This one is more philosophical. How to face the mess we're in with unexpected resilience and creative power. But also, like, go to YouTube, put in Joanna Macy. There's a million.
Pass It On is available as
Podcasts
a
and
paperback and
videos.
Kindle.
Okay,
Oh, good.
$7 for a Kindle.
but there's a million videos and podcasts with her as well. When she was 80, I'm sure maybe there's more questions, but I wanted to read this quickly first. In her 80s, she discovered, somebody asked her at the end of a workshop, she goes, so are you going to train all these people to take vows? And she was like, no, I don't need vows. But he was a Buddhist priest who said it was very important to him to have his own vows, and she might think about it. So she came up with her own vows, which I'm just going to read. I vow to myself, and I have this on my wall, I vow to myself and to each of you to commit myself daily to the healing of our world and the welfare of all beings, to live on earth more lightly and less violently, in the food, the products, and the energy that I consume. To draw strength and guidance from the living earth, the ancestors, the future generations, and my siblings and kin of all species. To support others in their work for the world, and to ask for help when I need it. And to pursue a daily practice that clarifies my mind, strengthens my heart, and supports me in observing these vows. They're really wonderful. I'd be happy to make copies of this if anybody wants. So that's sort of what my life is about. I feel like I'm kind of. I was telling my daughter the other day that especially if I'm able to move to the tiny house and do the garden, I feel like I'm going back and becoming a nun all over. Or maybe not, which I like. Yes.
I read something, I think just this past week, that has really stuck with me. Grief is love persevering. I love that.
Yeah. It is. It is. And when I think about the climate, I mean, there are mass extinctions, so there's definite just solid loss. But it's like hospice. It's a lot more like hospice. We're just doing hospice work. And that is grief persevering. Yes. It is love. It is fidelity to beings that are meaningful. Thanks.
What kind of help do you need setting up your nonprofit?
Well, I have 3 people who are working board-ish, which is cool. I'm going to need the legal pieces. That's a piece that's like, I don't know what that means. Information and guidance on that part, and probably some financial. I have a pretty strong financial plan. And then it's going to be there'll be once a month work days on the garden and the land I'm coming up with. I want to use a Kamala Harris model of let's find as many people that will do $1 to $5 a month, and then leave things to emergence and surprise if we come up with a big event as well. But there's not a lot of overhead at this place, which is nice. Much of it can be donation based. I want to bring in, like I'm going to speak with Wayne Dyer, and I happen to know a lot of people who work with nonprofits. Folks that, like at the place, for example, the young people's apartment building over on Uinta. At this point, they're can no longer be at the downtown space, and so they're growing out of homelessness and they have an apartment. They don't have their own garden, so let's bring a team of them over to work in the garden once a week, and then when it's harvest time, they can bring it back. So I have like 6 or 7 different nonprofits that I can work with folk like that, and it will all be donation based, very Dharma, Buddhist in that regard, but I think with enough of the $1 to $5 a month stuff, we'll be able to cover that. So, yeah, thank you. But Rob, I will come to you. There is something. Oh, and how to do all of this stuff. There's going to be a need for that kind of thing. There is a large multi-purpose room, and which has been used for us as a sangha. We'll be using it for educational things and art things, as well as song.
Any other questions?
Ideas, thoughts? What do you think of KEEP? The KEEP project, yeah?
It's a single word. It's
K-E-P-P.
K-E-E-P, and then small project.
Well, thank you, Annie Rose.
Like the first version.
Oh, yes.
People that have that preference.
So funny, because like, meeting, I remember,
Yeah.
the 80s or the 90s, but it was Jeff Bezos was just doing books. He was leaving and he had a fist. But he had this idea where don't give me a book, it will disappear. Sucks in the void. Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm really excited.
It's so funny because both of our daughters have this voice.
Like her part where she was said that like we're at a certain time. Like the things that makes you feel less independent, right?
That's cool.
Anyway, like really
Good job, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Great, yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to work there.
Hey, Jim, I don't know if you were here at the beginning or not, but Ken is going to be here. No, I'm sorry, Wes. Wes from FF.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you've
been 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. From
Then it works.
yeah, so thanks for that heads up. Yep.
Okay, all right.
You know what I mean? Excited.
Speaking of relaxing seats.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
Thank you for being here.
Bravo.
It's fun and exciting.